The Anglo-Italian pod. It is Monday evening, of course. That means it's time for the Monday Night Euro review show. I, as always, am Rory. I'm joined by my very good friend Adam and a new friend of the show at JSGC, or Jace to his friends. How are we doing, man?
Good, thank you very much. Derby Day win for City yesterday, so I'm absolutely buzzing, mate. Absolutely buzzing.
I just wanted to ask at the top of the show, are you bored of battering him yet? Because it does feel
Never.
like it's happening more and more frequently.
Never. I've been supporting City since 2002, albeit a short stretch that I had of seeing City pre-takeover. I only got to endure 6 years of pain, but there were 6 brutal years growing up. Me being based in the northwest of England, you're getting the big rise of Manchester United through the late 90s and the early noughties. You obviously have tremendous success from Liverpool on the European stage at the same time as well. Literally, when it comes to supporting teams, it's either United or Liverpool. And me being a City fan was always felt like I was just the odd one out, and everyone just likes to tease because City just simply weren't as good. So when we've had our rise and we're able to dethrone Liverpool, no matter how good that they've been over the last few years, and the fact that we've managed to continuously beat Manchester United as well, never gets boring.
Well, as an Arsenal fan, growing up near Manchester, growing up in Crewe, I also had to put up with gloating United fans the entire time.
Awful.
Yeah, it is horrible. It is horrible completely. But I need to say, Adam, I need to welcome you in. How you doing, man? You good?
I'm doing very well. I skipped the Ballon d'Or just for our show, so I think there's more scenes here. To be fair, but yeah, doing quite well. And like you guys, I'm full of Man United fans around this region, even though I'm based down south. So yeah, we can all join in the bashing, can't we now? So we're all good.
I can't wait. It's going to be a full hour of it, I reckon.
Yeah.
But we do need to, well, we'll start at Old Trafford, right? And Jace, we'll get how were you feeling heading into this game? Because I feel like, as much as I said, like, you do batter them quite a lot, their record wasn't that bad. Like, they beat you at Old Trafford last year, controversially, albeit. But how were you feeling headed into the game? Did you think it would be as comfortable as it was?
There were a lot of City fans in the build-up to this game that were very nervous. I think it's just natural when we're facing Manchester United to get the pre-Derby Day nerves. I imagine you're probably very familiar with that when you're facing Spurs. Being an Arsenal fan, you get them Derby Day jitters that people just weren't feeling that confident. And very much at City, even though we've won so many trophies now over the last decade or so, the motto at City has always been typical City. And I feel like that's just a difficult motto to shift away from fans, that you end up building up to any big game. You're going in with tremendous negativity because you're preparing yourself for the worst, that typical City's going to strike and that we're not going to get the result that we're looking for. I think from my own, look, I'm running my own YouTube channel. I'm able to do a lot of analysis. I'm seeing a lot of what Manchester City are doing right from through the academy and in the background and stuff. It just filled me with confidence. So there's no game out there that I fear. I know exactly what City are capable of. We haven't managed to display it that often this season, even though we picked up 6 wins in a row in the Premier League. None of them wins were that convincing. We certainly weren't hitting the heights that we were capable of from the business end of last season. And this game against United was a chance for not just Manchester City to showcase that we've still got it, but also a chance for Manchester United to try and show actually they've got something that they can build the rest of their campaign on. And so it was, to me, a very pivotal derby. And it just showed that at the end of the day, Manchester United are far, far away from where they want to be. And Manchester City now, I feel like, are just slowly starting to find their feet. And with how City performed yesterday, I do feel like if we're going up against anybody in the world, we can put in such a dominating display away from home as well, against our local rivals, a game we want to win more than any other in the Premier League. It just showcases, I think, where Manchester City are at and the direction that they're going in for this season. I don't want to come across as being cocky or anything, but it's going to be difficult for everybody else in the Premier League to be able to dethrone Manchester City when they're in the mood that they was in yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, it's kind of scary that I have to remember that Kevin De Bruyne is still to come back into this team at some point as well. And I'm like, obviously last year as an Arsenal fan, I got a little bit carried away and allowed myself to kind of start believing. And then obviously what happened. This year, I'm very much trying to stop myself from doing that and reminding myself that Kevin De Bruyne is coming back is the way I'm doing that, because especially the second half performance, it was when Man City really started to dominate. I think like, especially the second goal was a carbon copy of the attack that Onana saved at the end of the first half, which exposes issues with United, which we'll get to. But do you feel like that second goal really allowed City to start breathing and find their feet? Because at that point, it stopped being a competition.
We are always looking for that, what I call the killer second goal. We look for a 2-goal cushion. That gives us that little bit of a gap, a bit of leeway for us to just be a little bit more expressive, and it just takes the pressure away. Whilst the game's at 1-0, the game's not over. It only takes one attack. We've been stung before in the past. One game that comes to mind last season is a match against Nottingham Forest. We completely annihilated them right from minute 1 right through to minute 80. All of a sudden, Nottingham Forest don't do anything all game. We've got it at 1-0. Nottingham Forest do one thing, one attack, one goal, and they came away with a point. And that point could have been potentially devastating at the top of the Premier League. We had to go on a tremendous run from there to be able to topple Arsenal last season. So you're always a bit weary when we're at 1-0. We saw it at Old Trafford last season. We was 1-0 up there as well. A decision doesn't go your way, momentum turns, and all of a sudden you end up getting a negative result. So to me, look for that killer second goal, kill the game off, and we can relax and we can push from there. And often you'll see City then go on and score 3, 4, 5. My only criticism from yesterday, I think if City wanted even 6 or 7, and it sounds outrageous for me to say that, if they wanted it, they could have had it.
Yeah, I think 3 definitely flatters Manchester United. But Adam, I'm going to go to you. Did Man City get a fortuitous result in the penalty or a fortuitous decision? Because I think if that's a penalty, which I think technically it is a penalty, but if it's consistently used across the league, then we are going to get penalties every single game, right? And we know it's not going to be consistently used. How did you feel about the penalty?
Yeah, I said to you when it first happened, I felt like it was going to be one of those that could be given either way. So, sometimes you see those kind of decisions being given.
Mate, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I can hear.
Yeah, I was going to say I can hear you. But yeah, all I was going to say was I see them very constantly happen all the time. And it's just one of those things that I find that in that very instance, Haaland is deliberately just trying to stop the player. I feel like there is certain circumstances where you see it on corners as well, where people are holding shirts, etc. But this was a deliberate kind of attention kind of piece by Haaland. He wasn't even concentrating with Rodri when he was making that run. So for me, I felt that was definitely a penalty. But I can see what you mean by we could see this a bit more frequently, but a bit like the inconsistencies we've seen across the season with many decisions, including offside as well. We don't have to extend it too much, but yeah, I mean, there's loads of decisions, and I could go on about League One refereeing standards as well, because being Wycombe Wanderers fan, I get it all the time. So in summary, all I would say is I think it was penalty personally.
How did you feel about it, Jay? Well, I imagine you were very happy about it, but did you feel you got away with it a bit?
Well, I think it's just like you said before. You'll see these challenges game after game up and down the leagues, and often they just go unpunished. And that could easily have just gone unpunished, and I think everyone would just brush it off and say perhaps should have been a penalty. They don't really get given. We move on with it. And normally such a big game, they're looking for something that's really stonewall. So I could understand the frustrations. I was covering it on my live stream yesterday during the penalty incident. I saw it and I didn't really know what had happened on the first take of it. It's only when they show the replays, you see it in slow motion, that it looks maybe worse than what it was. But because Rodri's got the extra yard on him, he grabs the shirt. He's leaving the decision up to the officials. And once you go over to the monitor, there's only going to be one decision as far as I'm concerned. I thought it was a bit harsh. As you said, it just often isn't going to get punished up and down the divisions. I do feel like there needs to be a better level of consistency across the board. If they're going to be giving penalties like that, then they need to be giving it in every single game, not just in one or two, or just highlighting the problem in a big game in a Manchester derby. I was delighted to get the penalty. I thought it was a penalty according to the law, but it is what it is. We're going to be, throughout the whole season, we're going to have decisions that go our way that I'm going to be very happy with. There's going to be decisions that don't go our way that I'm going to moan about. Football.
Yeah, well, exactly. But so I want to move on to, before we give United a proper shooting, another proper shooting. I wanted to ask you who your standout performers were for City. I think Bernardo Silva's the first name that's probably going to come out. But yeah, talk to us about Bernardo Silva. Any other players that kind of particularly impressed you?
We've had a big concern over the last few weeks. I don't know if you've been watching City as religiously as what I do, but we've gone from having a midfield at the start of the season where we saw Ilkay Gundogan leave, Kevin De Bruyne had picked up an injury, Bernardo Silva's not been as fit as what we normally have him, and all of a sudden you take away a Gundogan, a Bernardo, and a Kevin De Bruyne, and you get the likes of Calvin Phillips and Mateus Nunes going into our midfield, and all of a sudden it doesn't look as good, and it looks a bit shaky. You saw it in the game against Arsenal. I saw it in the Carabao Cup loss that we had against Newcastle. It was there on display when we lost against Wolves as well. To me, we need that settled midfield, and having a midfield made up of John Stones, Rodri, Bernardo Silva, Julian Alvarez. It's an outstanding midfield. It's a midfield that doesn't miss the presence of Ilkay Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne. That's how much depth there is there for City. Take one or two injuries away from them players, and all of a sudden it doesn't look as good. But whilst we've got them available in the big games, they're capable of taking anybody apart. Bernardo Silva's an outstanding player. He can play on the right, play on the left, can go through the middle, drops deeper, as you saw yesterday. He's more than capable of playing as a deep-lying playmaker. He can drop into defensive midfield. He's not scared to get stuck in. He's just a complete midfielder that does literally anything and everything. He's the perfect Pep player. Pep tells him what he needs to do. Bernardo Silva listens, Bernardo Silva does, and it works time and time again. But I also want to speak about Rodri and John Stones and just how good it made Man City's defence. Just how much more improved Manchester City's defence looked yesterday because they were there in front of the defence. The distribution was outstanding. They looked calm and collective on the ball. They were winning the headers when they were coming into the box. United were trying cross after cross that just wasn't coming to any avail. And just as a whole, as a unit, the team, it just looked very settled. And I think that helped Manchester City yesterday in our fluent style of football. Elsewhere on the pitch, I didn't think it was Julian Alvarez's best game in midfield, if I'm honest. To see him drop a little bit deeper. But I think Erling Haaland's grabbing all the headlines, so Julian Alvarez doesn't really need to be on it when you've got an informed Erling Haaland that's starting to find his feet. So I just thought, all in all, it was just a perfect performance and a great team selection from Pep. I was a bit dubious about Jack Grealish starting. Again, he was dropping deeper and he was played an outstanding role for City yesterday, despite him not grabbing an assist or a goal, because everyone always criticises him. You don't see him get them statistics. You don't see him get them assists. You don't see him get them goals, and people don't really realise what's he bringing to the team. And what he is doing is just helping Manchester City as a team look much better with their ball retention. And Pep Guardiola's football, it's all about ball retention. If you're not going to keep hold of that ball, you're not going to find them passes, you're not going to do them dribbles, it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think Jack Grealish showed that he's the type of personality you want in a derby as well, because he doesn't back down at all. He had a few where he was stepping into scraps, and you're like, that's why you've got him on the field. But we need to talk about Manchester United, I suppose. Some fun statistics. Erling Haaland has now scored as many goals as Manchester United this season. Yeah. They've now lost as many games as they did under Alex Ferguson's entire reign since he's left the job at home, and it all looks a bit of a mess. I watched the Sky Sports coverage, and again, it was the Glazers who didn't defend the back post. It was the Glazers who didn't put in enough tackles in midfield. Yeah. Adam, can we continue to blame the Glazers? We know they're a problem, but also Erik ten Hag has to take some blame here. Taking off Amrabat at half-time is just handing the midfield to Man City for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for weeks that I felt Ten Hag has lost it. There's no kind of distinct style that you're finding with this side, and he's had 18 months to kind of develop and push on. And there was a really bizarre kind of summary that he gave to one of the reporters, which was he was asked about whether he was going to bring that kind of Ajax philosophy to Man United, and he said no, because Man United players don't suit that style and they're a little bit more direct. So I don't think he's really fond of the players, for one. But secondly, the thing is, he's had time to bring in his own players. Now, you can have a go and have a dig at the Glazers around their transfer policy, but ultimately, Ten Hag has had a say in terms of the players that he wanted. He wanted Anthony at the club, and his petulance was really evident towards the end of that match. It was how he didn't get sent off for that foul against Doku is incredible. But just there's no kind of identity. You just don't know what you're getting with Man United anymore. And the fact is, like, Harry Maguire was brought back in, even though he was willing to sell him on, and he could have given a penalty against Haaland, which wasn't really picked up very well. Johnny Evans looks so out of his depth. Unfortunately, he just the legs are gone.
For him.
Yeah, exactly. You feel sorry for the guy. But ultimately, all over the place, you need a whole new 11. Apart from Onana, who I thought was probably their best player on the day, and that's saying quite a lot about Man United at the moment. And Rashford, he just can't bring that form that he does for England to Man United. He clearly just does not feel comfortable in that environment. And I'm not a keen fan of Bruno Fernandes, but again, I don't know what he brings to that side anymore, because yeah, you could have said, yeah, he gives a bit of a class kind of touch, but I don't see it anymore. I don't see what he brings to the match. And in particular for the derbies, I've never actually seen him play very well. I don't know if Jay feels the same or Rory, but yeah, I don't see it.
I'm still working on my theory that Bruno Fernandes was only good during COVID. I'm pretty convinced he was only decent when there was no fans in the stadium. But Jace, how did you see Erik Ten Hag and United's performance? Because I felt like a lot of those mistakes are coachable mistakes, and a lot of the turning points were on his decisions.
He's got his style of football, and I feel like rather than trying to get Manchester United to adapt to his style of football, he's trying to adapt to Manchester United, and I think that's the first mistake that's happening with his tenure at Manchester United. It's a different ball game. I know Ajax are a very prestigious, very big club, but you would expect it to be a fundamentality that they're going to do very well in the Eredivisie. I know they're not doing very well this season.
Except this season.
Yeah. Except this season away from that, though. Yeah. You would expect Ajax time and time again to do well. And so to apply your style of play to a team that's already doing well, that's got very little competition, isn't as difficult a job as what it is taking on Manchester United when you're going up against some of the best coaches and some of the best players in the world. So I feel like he needs more authority to say, this is what I'm looking for and this is what I want you to do. And he's at times not been scared to make the big decision. You've seen it with Jadon Sancho, clearly out of favour, doesn't want him around the team dressing room. So he dismisses him away and says, you're training on your own. You're not going to be part of the match day squad. And it's all fine and well being the head coach and doing that, but you want to win that dressing room over. You want to get the confidence and the morale of the players up. You need the results on the pitch. And to be able to make that happen as a head coach, you need to go out there and really assert your authority. And at the moment, it looks like a bunch of clowns on the pitch. None of them look like they know what they're doing. And yesterday was a prime example of what an organised, disciplined team looks like going up against Manchester United. They made a complete fool of them. It was delightful to see from my end, but I can imagine the frustrations for the Manchester United fans yesterday. I was reading through some of the comments, and as funny as some of them were, a lot of the repetitive word coming in from the Manchester United fans, that what they were saying was at the end of the day, the Manchester United, they're a big club, they demand success, and to do that, you need a certain kind of arrogance about you. And I don't think Erik Ten Hag is that manager to be able to take Manchester United forward. I personally think he's an outstanding coach, and I think he should have waited at Ajax done a couple more seasons and built himself up a job where he'd be able to apply his style of play, because United just want instant success. They don't care about anything else other than we win trophies and we're the best team. And for that to happen for the position that they're in, they have to build a foundation there. And at the moment, there's no foundations there. That defense yesterday from them was an absolute joke. Johnny Evans is like 55 years old, and Harry Maguire is slower than the Titanic. What's that going to do up against Erling Haaland? I don't get it. It really doesn't make any sense. They had a Rafael Varane. I don't know how fit he was, but the fact that he's on the bench for Manchester United, if you're on the bench, you're fit enough to start. Why is he not in that starting 11? I don't understand. It was crazy. I thought Scott McTominay yesterday in the first half was Manchester United's best threat going forward. He forced a brilliant save from Ederson, and he forced a really good tame shot in the second minute. And then they decided to take Amrabat off and then drop McTominay deeper, and it took away all their midfield presence, and Manchester City were just allowed to completely dominate. I don't get what Ten Hag's thought was about Amrabat. I don't know if he was concerned. He was on a yellow card, wasn't he? I don't know
he
if
did get bugged
about that. But they just, I don't know what's going on at Manchester United. They just look undisciplined. You saw it with Anthony when he came on. He was only on for 2 minutes. He was kicking Jeremy Doku. He had 2 swipes at him, slapping him, raised hands. It baffles me. Baffles me. He's got no control of that dressing room.
No, and that's it. And I think
we've got.
Yeah, I think he's trying to put his foot down, right? He's really trying. It just feels like substitute teacher vibes. It's just not working. And
putting it.
Yeah, and like this morning, of course, the inevitable leaks come out that the players think the training isn't good enough. They think that it's too intense, and that's why there's so many injuries. And it's just this cycle that repeats and repeats and repeats. It is insane. I think there is the tiniest part of me that does feel quite bad for United fans. It's not a big part, but I do feel quite bad for them because they're just stuck in purgatory at the minute. And I think even if the owners do change and Jim Ratcliffe does come in, it's not going to be this new dawn and all of a sudden the whole direction of the club turns around. It needs roots and branches, complete reform. Like there's not a single part of the club I keep at this point.
It's like it's poisonous there. It needs weeding out, player by player, coach by coach, member of staff after member of staff. It all just needs weeding out and going again. And the problem that you've got, again, we'll go back to the fans, the demand instant success. It cannot happen overnight. It needs time. It needs time. And they're not going to give anybody time. And whilst that mindset's there, it's going to fail. Yeah.
No, I think you're completely right. Whoever the next person is, it's going to happen all over again. But we're going to give United fans a bit of a relief there. We're going to give them a rest, and we're going to move on to the rest of the Premier League, I think. Adam, which game are we going to talk about next?
Let's talk about Villa. I'm quite loving them at the moment.
12 consecutive wins at home for Unai Emery and Aston Villa, and not only are they winning, they are blasting teams out of the window. Now that's 3-1. Again, Luton Town are a pretty hard team to beat. They only lose by the odd goal. They're not taking like hammerings like Sheffield United. But for Aston Villa, Diaby gets his first goal at Villa Park as well. And Adam, Aston Villa Europa League this year, surely it feels like they are massively pushing.
They are, and they're getting the right momentum at the moment. And we've spoken for the last few weeks about Ollie Watkins and how he's becoming much more of a focal point. He just needs to work on that consistency piece. But when you look at what they've got set up and how Emery likes to kind of like change the tactics during the duration of the match as well, he's kind of likes to pull players out and create opportunities for others. I think you've got the right blend of players right now. He's really worked it out, and they just are so exciting at the moment. They are kind of like Brighton from last season, aren't they? Just you expect them to push on even further. And I think, when he's rejuvenated the likes of McGinn, for example, you've seen what a like class play he's becoming now. We knew that before he joined as well. Like obviously there was a player there, but he went stale under Gerrard, and now he's back to his best again. So again, just the way that they're playing at the moment, they're so fluid. They get crosses into the box. Lucas Digne, he has a quiet game, one match, then he turns up. I mean, you look at the team and you're just genuinely excited. And I'm glad for once Villa fans have got something to cheer, because they haven't had that for a number of years. But yeah, they're just playing some really nice football at the moment. And yeah, with Diaby, as you alluded to, he seems like a bargain now, doesn't he? I mean, 50 million is just nothing now.
It's incredible. Like, he was linked with like lots of clubs in the Premier League, and I think Villa have been really good at identifying targets like that and just getting those players that maybe the like top 4 clubs are kind of doubtful about, and like, do we take the risk? And Villa just come in, get them, and like even Diego Carlos at the back. Like, there's a few players that they brought in where I just massively raised the level. Like, Jason, how impressed by Villa have you been this year? Like, it is Unai Emery. I'm so happy to see him doing well, honestly.
He's a fantastic manager, and Aston Villa are building foundations there to make sure that there's, like you were saying before, almost Brighton-esque from last season, that there's a bit of a conveyor belt there that perhaps a couple of the big teams may come sniffing for 1 or 2 of their players, and I don't think it'll have any impact on them whatsoever. They're a team that are playing right now with a lot of confidence. They're difficult to beat, which is always going to work well in the Premier League. I know that City have got Villa coming up at the beginning of December at Villa Park. There isn't a game right now. We've got Chelsea away coming up. We've got Liverpool at home coming up. We've got Spurs as well at home coming up. It's that Villa match that causes me the most concern, causes me a headache, to a point that we've got a match against Young Boys in the Champions League. We win that, we seal qualification into the last 16. We need to seal qualification ASAP. We need to just get players rested and rotated as quickly as possible, because we've got some difficult fixtures coming up. And I think Villa, to me, is one of, if not the most difficult that we've got coming up. That's how good that they can be. Fantastic manager in Unai Emery. I'm impressed with the defence. I think Torres is a fantastic centre-back. I know City were linked with him a couple of years back. I've been impressed with the performance of Cash at right-back as well. It just looks like a very settled team. And I'm delighted that former City man Douglas Luiz, one of our young players that we brought in from Brazil, he wanted to play. We bring lots of players and we sell them for profit. It's how we manage. It's what we do. But he's an outstanding player, and I'm so happy to see him doing really well with Aston Villa and going from strength to strength. And to me, there's not many weaknesses when it comes to Aston Villa. They're aggressive off the ball, they're good with the football, they're clinical in front of goal. They're a team that, in my opinion, people are speaking about who are title threats. Well, if we're going to look at after 10 games, we have to talk about Aston Villa, because they're not far away from where they need to be. And the longer that run goes on, if they start picking up some results against them top teams, like when we go to Villa Park and they beat us, all of a sudden, people are going to be talking about them. And I rate them. I think they're good. They're a really good team.
Yeah, they're absolutely flying. The joint top scorers in the division, tied with Newcastle with 26 goals. So you take away Sheffield United, you take away that 8, and Aston Villa are absolutely heads and shoulders above everyone in terms of the goals scored. So absolutely loving it down at Villa Park. I do think Luton, I didn't expect Luton to be the best of the promoted teams. Adam, are you surprised by that? I feel like they're learning lessons quicker than the other two.
They are, but they're very workmanlike. They kind of are camaraderie. They haven't got any big names or fancy names. And I know they've added a few bits of quality here and there, but genuinely they work for each other. And I think if you compare it to the other two teams, obviously I think with Burnley, we saw how good they were in the Championship. They played some really total football in that respect. But it feels like Company is, we've had this debate where he sticks to this philosophy of he wants to play total football in the Premier League. I think he's getting a bit found out against certain teams, and that's where he maybe needs to tweak it a little bit. And you saw that goal that Bournemouth scored. I mean, obviously they noticed that Trafford was going to be off his line, and they took advantage of that. And with Sheffield United, obviously they got a lot of players picked off them before the start of the season, so they really didn't stand much of a chance. But Heckingbottom keeps on playing this line of everyone's against us, basically, but they're not getting results ultimately. So it does feel like Luton are the most realistic to actually stay up, which is weird because I think everyone fancies them to be bottom, right?
I feel like Burnley off the ball are just awful. Like the second they're not in possession, the teams just run through them. And then Sheffield United, I've not seen many teams worse turn up to the Emirates than that lot last weekend. I've got a mate who's a Sheffield United fan, and he messaged me pre-game like, "Please be nice. Like, I'm terrified of what's going to happen here." Like, Jace, who do you see from the promoted sides? Do you think Luton have the best shout?
Quite possibly. I look at Sheffield United, I look at Burnley. In particular, Burnley, I got to watch them a fair bit last season. Their flair and style of football was very good to watch. I'm starting to fit, because when I did my prediction at the beginning of the season, I had Burnley. I thought they'd comfortably stay up. I thought Vincent Kompany would be able to apply his style of football to the Premier League. And when it comes to facing teams who are going to be around them at the bottom, I thought Burnley would be able to dictate. And it just goes to show that in football, sometimes you can have all the skill, you can have all the players, you can have all the attributes. Sometimes it's just about confidence and all about form. And Luton have done that the best out of the newly promoted teams to take that forward. They know exactly what they're going to do. In the Championship, there was always a difficult team to beat. Kenilworth Road was always a difficult place to go and visit for any team that was going there. And they've taken that forward and said, you know what, that's what we do really well. And that's what we're going to continue to do in the Premier League. Sheffield United, I haven't seen anything from them so far this season. I think they'll be very disappointed with the start. I don't really know what to suggest for them to improve and be able to stay up, because I don't think they've got the quality to stay in the Premier League. And I'm starting to have some doubts about Burnley as well. Vincent Kompany's I love him. He's a Manchester City legend. I want him to do really well, but I don't think Burnley's got the quality for the style of football that he's looking to go up against the quality of opponents that they've got in the Premier League. And there is a stealthing difference between the Premier League and the Championship. And Burnley and Sheffield United have had a bit of a smack in the face when it comes to that gulf in difference. And Luton, fair credit to them, have adapted really well. And it wouldn't surprise me if they managed to grind out and continue this for the rest of the season and manage to get themselves out of the relegation zone and keep themselves up.
I am praying that happens, just for the narrative. It would be so good for them to just stay up one season. Just stay up one season.
It really wouldn't surprise me.
I think the power of friendship, that's what it gets you, the power of friendship. We're going to move on, and we're going to move down to London, because I can't believe it's taken us this long. We're going to laugh at Chelsea. Brentford got their annual win at Stamford Bridge in the least surprising turn of events. I just sat there watching this game going, how did we draw to this lot? How were we 2-0 down to this lot? That draw at Stamford Bridge is going to haunt my dreams for a while. Adam, I'm going to go for you. Brentford haven't looked great this year at all, but this is a performance that they can really hang their hat on and move forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, they took advantage of what I would say was intense kind of pressure on kind of that midfield, really. That was the telling point. I mean, if you force mistakes out of that Chelsea side, they sort of crumble. And, it's very evident. I mean, if you look at that defence, I don't think that's the strongest defence in the Premier League. And that was very evident. I mean, even Robert Sanchez, we don't know what he was doing half the time with his decision-making again. But just, Thomas Franks took advantage. They've got some good players. This is the thing with Brentford. They've got some really good players, but they are missing Ivan Toney. But yeah, full credit to them. They took advantage, and Mbeumo and, Neil Maupay.
He's been unbelievable in Mbeumo this season as well. I feel like he's really, without Toney, we're really seeing the best of him. And it was a really how have you felt about Brentford, Jason? Have you been impressed with how they've handled Ivan Toney missing? I know they've had a bit of a rough start to the season, but this is a kind of a bright spark, I suppose.
It's always going to be a big loss losing somebody as good as Ivan Toney, really. But that result, Stamford Bridge, it's an annual thing for them, isn't it? Go to Stamford Bridge. And as you said, I can see them using that now as their little turning point in the season, and they start to kick on from here. But there's been a few performances I've seen from Brentford. I mean, I thought they were very unlucky when they went to Old Trafford at the beginning of the month. Manchester United, I thought, got a bit lucky with a couple of injury time goals there. But so that they've clearly got it about them. They're a difficult Premier League team to break down. They're a difficult team to beat. And just like a lot of Premier League teams that are stuck in that middle pack, which is where I'd put Brentford right now. If you're a top team who's got expectation, all the pressure's on you and not on Brentford. And if you give Brentford the opening goal, they've got something to defend, they've got something to hang on to, and their defence, outstanding defence in my opinion, they can just turn up and they can just get that job done. And that's exactly what's happened here at Stamford Bridge as well. And I can see Brentford now starting to kick on from there and start climbing up the table. They're a good team, but I think they've adapted really well without Ivan Toney, certainly. they're kicking on now. I can see them going on and trying to just continue to push. I'm just having a look at their fixtures that they've got coming up. They've got a couple of difficult fixtures, actually. They've got Liverpool and Arsenal coming up, consecutive games in November that won't be easy. But these are the kind of games for me that Brentford really thrive on. And they've picked up now back-to-back victories. They've got a match coming up against West Ham. They were looking to try and win that. And then all of a sudden, it's a difficult game for Liverpool, even though it is at Anfield, and it might be a difficult game as well away for Arsenal at Brentford too. So we'll see. I rate Brentford, though. They're a good team. They did the double over us. They're the only team that did the double over us last season, and we won the treble. So the something about them.
Yeah, no, they've got enough about them. For Chelsea, I think I'm just looking at the team that started. Now, Disasi is a player I'm still massively, the jury's out on for me. Levi Colwill, I think, is being hyped to the point that I'm not sure. I've honestly, from the games I've seen him, he looks fine, but people are talking like he's the next coming of like Maldini. I think there's a little bit of a problem there. But the biggest problem, I think, is Nicholas Jackson. Now, I think I might have said he was going to be the signing of the season. I thought he would adapt to the Premier League a bit quicker than this. Like, Adam, do you think they're missing Nkunku and that is the main problem? Is he the problem, or is it just throughout?
I mean, there's a combination of they need someone that can get the ball in the back of the net. Certainly, if you look at the XG, they created a whole host of chances. I think I want to say it was 27 shots they had against Brentford, something like that. Just looking, actually, 17 shots and 2 of them being on target. So that kind of summarizes that kind of game for you. But yeah, I mean, there is also a combination of, like, when they go from midfield, there's no one that kind of creates that space. And you can see there was highlighted on Match Today, Liam Delap is kind of shouting at players. Now, this is a guy that is obviously less experienced than some of his counterparts around the pitch, including Raheem Sterling. And he's trying to say, like, come on, you need to move, like, create some space to you, those kind of opportunities. So I feel like at the moment they are lacking that kind of spark, but they're also, it feels like they're all kindergarten kids, aren't they? Just they are developing at the same time. And that's the problem when you buy so many players that have got like potential talent rather than having experienced heads around them. You know, like we talked about Kovacic and what a steal that was for Man City, for example. I don't understand why they got rid of him, because he would have been really nice in that midfield right now to give them that kind of guidance, you know, to get a hold of him and business overall. So, yeah, I think Chelsea don't have the right philosophy yet. I do feel sorry for Pochettino to an extent, but yeah, the kind of floor stands by Pochettino. Everything that he's kind of trying to work out with this Chelsea squad lands on him at the moment. And, you know, they're so inconsistent with that performances. But you said it yourself, you know, somehow you were losing to the same team 2-0 last weekend, and yet they do that performance against Brentford. That shows you how yo-yo this Chelsea side is. And I think it's going to take them at least 2 years before we start seeing the true Chelsea side, unfortunately. And it might not be with Pochettino at the helm as well.
Well, the interesting thing is as well, like this whole master plan of theirs with the finances, how long can they not qualify for the Champions League before it becomes a problem? Because they've bet it all on the hat, like they've bet it all on black and gone, right, let's see, this has to pay off. So they really need to start getting European football at some point. It's not happening this season. I think we can safely say that. The last Premier League game we're going to talk about, because I'm absolutely in love with this guy. He had such a great start to the season last season, went a bit quiet, but this year he's absolutely smashing it. Hwang at Wolves scores yet again as they come back. They come back late on against Newcastle to make it 2-2. Gary O'Neill doing a fantastic job at Wolves. They're now kind of mid-table, looking fairly comfortable. Jason, we had Wolves to go down, but this is another gritty, disciplined performance from them.
Yeah, I think they've pleasantly surprised me. I had Wolves to be relegated as well. Was it a day or is it a week before the Premier League season started when the manager left? And I just thought that's just confirming
that's them gone.
Wolves are at. And that just, honestly, it swayed me. I was thinking 15th, 16th, 17th. I think they're going to stay up. They look like they're in disarray. I think they're going to be the team, that surprise package that's potentially going to go down. And all of a sudden, Gary O'Neill's come in, another good, solid manager who's made Wolves very difficult to beat. And Pep Guardiola, as he famously said, with Hwang, that Korean guy, seems to have just gone on leaps and bounds. He's used that as motivation. We've seen Miguel Almiron use it at Newcastle when Jack Grealish called him out in our title celebrations a couple of seasons ago. And they use it as fuel, as motivation. And Hwang now seems to be going from strength to strength. But Wolves, they beat us back at the end of September. We just didn't play a very good game, and Wolves did what they needed to do, and they made themselves difficult to beat. They grabbed the goals, they were clinical in front of goal, and all of a sudden, they're unbeaten now in their last 4 games, I think. Picked up what is a pretty good point against Newcastle. Considering that they were trailed both times in that game. So Wolves are a good team. I had them to get relegated just purely based on the direction that it looked like they were going in. At the moment, they look like they're going to be comfortably staying up. They look like a pretty solid Premier League team. I'll be honest, I've not been that impressed with Newcastle so far this season. I don't know whether they're just feeling a bit of a fatigue from playing Champions League football. It just seems like at the moment up on Tyneside that all motivation for them seems to be about Champions League football and this very difficult group. And you're going to enjoy the moment. You're playing Champions League football for the first time in 20 odd years. So you have every right to enjoy that. But I've not been that impressed with Newcastle so far this season in the Premier League. So I'm wondering what they're going to do to try and bridge that gap, because at the moment there's a little bit of a points difference starting to elaborate between themselves and the leading top 5 at the moment, and they may struggle to make Champions League football next season if they allow Spurs, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, and Aston Villa just to continue with their form. And if it continues for another 5 or 6 games, it could be a good 10, 15 points behind. I know we're only in the first half of the season. We're in the early stages, but every point matters, and they need to be grinding out and picking up them wins, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I feel like Eddie Howe isn't really rotating much. We've not seen much of Tino Livramento. We've not seen much of that lad that they bought from Chelsea, who was apparently amazing. Not seeing him. I feel like he's very much sticking with the same 11, and that's why they are kind of struggling to get these results. Adam, do you think it is the Champions League having an effect on them? They're still scored. Again, you have to take that Sheffield United game out of the way, I suppose, but they have still scored plenty of goals.
Yeah, I would say also the kind of injury to Sven Botman has definitely taken its toll on them. I think he brings them a little bit more solidity in that central kind of area of that defence. That certainly helps that kind of midfield worry about their duties. And certainly, I think, obviously, they've tried to find their steps with Tonali. Tonali hasn't necessarily been on form. Obviously, we know what's happened more recently.
He's not going to be for a while.
He's not going to be playing there for a while. That's a bit of a taste at the moment with that 70 million down the drain. But that said, they've got more about them, and it'll be a question of how do they progress out of this group? Do they actually progress? And if they don't, then I suspect they'll kind of regroup, and then you'll see them better in the league. But that said, look, I think they've got a good enough squad to still be up there by the end of the season. And it's just going to be a question of, can they get that consistency? I mean, don't forget, they've played quite a lot of football as well. They've played a hell of a lot of football at this stage. So maybe that is a bit of fatigue now playing in. So I'm surprised Eddie Howe doesn't rotate it, but he did this at Bournemouth as well. If you remember, he used to stick with certain players because he liked how they played. And this was the question marks at Bournemouth. Why didn't he let the likes of Fraser have a chance? And this was always an ongoing thing. So I suspect he's just playing with trusted players at the moment that he knows will do a job. And I suspect he will add more in January's transfer window as well.
There's a really interesting, just having a look at Newcastle's fixtures. So they've got the next game they're playing on Wednesday night. They've got United in the League Cup. Obviously, they knocked us out in the third round. And Newcastle, to me, they need a trophy, and the most winnable trophy they've got is the Carabao Cup. And they'll take a lot of confidence off the fact that they've knocked us out in the third round, and they've got an away match against Manchester United. And Newcastle have taken 8,000 fans down. They're going to go with a really strong team, and they're going to be well up for the cup. But I look at the weekend, and they've got a home match against Arsenal.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything.
It's this rotation thing, though. I look at the fixtures they've got. So they face United on Wednesday, then they've got Arsenal at home on the Saturday before they've got a huge crunch game with Dortmund away from home on the Tuesday. Yeah. So they're playing 3 times in 6 days. And I'm not sure they've got the depth there to deal with the caliber of teams that they're going to be taking on. It'd be very interesting. I think this, it sounds dramatic even at this early stage, but I just feel like this next week's going to be really pivotal for Newcastle, really pivotal for their season.
Yeah, they've got a lot of big fixtures coming up. It'll be interesting to see. We're going to leave the Premier League there. I'm very quickly going to say Eddie Nketiah hat-trick. His 3rd goal, I absolutely loved it. His first ever goal from outside the box for Arsenal. That has increased his average goal distance by some way, because usually it's about 6 inches off the line. But beautiful moment from him. Great to see Emil Smith-Rowe starting. Just a lovely Saturday afternoon sat watching Arsenal. You don't get many of them. Usually it's a bit more uncomfortable, so I enjoyed that. Elsewhere, Tottenham did win. Boo. They did continue this run, which is starting to worry me a little bit. Liverpool beat Forest 3-0. Brighton drew 1-1 with Fulham. Palhinha scored an absolute banger in that goal. Brighton really struggling at the moment, but they've got some fixtures coming up that could make it a little bit easier for them. And Everton with an incredible away performance against West Ham. West Ham absolutely toothless. Really, really frustrating afternoon for them. Did not start at all. And then Everton just super disciplined, kept doing what they're doing. Pickford making some big saves. And Calvert-Lewin with a beautiful finish on the edge of the box again to get a big win for Everton there. They're all of a sudden looking... I'm not going to say comfortable because Everton fans won't thank me for saying that, but they're looking a lot more comfortable than we expected, I think. So we're going to leave the Premier League there and we're going to go to Italy, where it was a mental weekend. So Sunday was beautiful. Me and Adam, just before the record, were talking about what a lovely day of football it was yesterday. So we're going to start with the game that everyone was looking forward to. Everyone had penciled it in their diaries. Cagliari 4, Frosinone 3 in a game... My God. Now, me and Adam were messaging again during the game. Frosinone were 3-0 up. West Ham Everton started. I thought, you know what, this game's done. Switch over to West Ham Everton. All of a sudden, I get a message from Adam like, are you watching? Are Cagliari going to get back into this? I was like, oh, crap. I had to flip back over. What a game, Adam. The first half, Frosinone looked like it was home and dry. Sule, it was all about Sule. Just let's give Frosinone a bit of credit first, and then we'll talk about how they fucked it up.
So Frosinone, obviously the team that have just come up from Serie B, and I kind of didn't think they would do much this season. You, on the other hand, did, and they proved likewise that their results are very good. They've got some good additions, and Sule in particular looks a standout addition at the moment. Only on loan from Juventus. He looks like a perfect candidate to fit into that Juve squad in the future. But he takes those 2 goals superbly. I mean, the first from distance and the second one just kind of knocks down, gets it past a few defenders and then slots it past the goalkeeper. So you're thinking the worst for Cagliari, especially Ranieri hasn't really been able to record much wins on that team at the moment. And they've struggled for results generally. And I'm expecting the worst. Obviously, a third is then added as second half kicks off. So you're thinking 3-0 down. This could be even worse for Cagliari. They looked absolutely awful. And then out of nowhere, they do this amazing comeback, which was
70th minute.
First time in history I saw the stat as well. First time an Italian team from the 70th minute mark are able to bring it back. And boy, did they put a lot of effort into it. Every attack that they did, Frosinone just seemed to just crumble or just stand still. It was almost like, when you've got those kind of motion, like it slowed down just to see the ball kind of spinning towards the goal. It was one of those moments. And every time you just saw an attack, you just felt Cagliari were going to score this. And they did. And Pavramento, who came on as well, Pavarotti, the forward, I've forgotten his name, but he absolutely dominated Pavoletti.
The second he came on, like super experienced striker, 35 years old, Cagliari hero, comes on, and it looks like the game's gone for Frosinone. And 94th and 96th minute winners. It felt like we've all played in games of football where you can just feel the tide turning and there's nothing you can do. And it would just seem like from the second I turned over, so you're welcome, Cagliari fans, from the second I turned over, it felt like Cagliari were only going to score. But Ranieri, it's a huge win for him. This is Cagliari's first win of the season. He was starting to get rumours about being sacked. Jason, it's always nice to see Ranieri with a smile on his face, right?
A cracking manager, cracking manager. So it's nice to see him do well. I'm just having a look. I came across the match yesterday. I just saw 4-3. Sounds very entertaining. I didn't know there were 3-0 down and pulled it all back inside. Less than 24 minutes.
Absolutely
crazy.
incredible.
Do you know, it'll be very interesting to see how Frosinone managed to respond from this. To be honest, they've just come up from Serie B going into Serie A. Going 3-0 up away from home against Caglari, and it looks like they're going to pick up a win, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on the receiving end of history. It'd be interesting in the next game to see how they respond from there and how mentally strong the players are. And for Cagliari picking up the first win of the season now, they need to start to build on that, really. It looks very tight down there, actually.
It is.
Area, to be honest.
It's going to be tense down there. I think Frosinone, it's mad because their away form has been absolutely atrocious. And then when they went 3-0 up, everyone was like, oh, okay, they've learned a few things. Turned out they learned nothing, unfortunately. But yeah, Cagliari, first win for them, absolutely massive. And one of those games that just sometimes Serie A is absolutely mental, just absolutely mental. And that was one of them, thankfully. Unbelievable. We do also need to say players for Cagliari that really stood out. Makumbu again with one of the goals. I also really like Lovumbo, the forward. He's been really good this season, really, really exciting. And I think he had a very good game as well. So great result for them. What a start to the Sunday. We're going to skip to Sunday evening. The late kickoff. Napoli to Milan 2. And Adam, I think this was a real treat, right? This game was absolute box office.
This was the game that I think most Serie A fans were looking forward to. But genuinely, it was a game of kind of chess, essentially, because you had two different halves. Napoli really struggled in the first half. Milan put in a lot of intensity, pressure, using that kind of midfield three of Musa as well as Reinders and Krunic to really put pressure on the likes of Zielinski and Lobotka. And it really did come to fruition in the 22nd mark when Pulisic puts a cross in, and Giroud, who has an 8-game drought, manages to get his head, and his head is just too much for Meret in the goal. A lot of people have said Meret should do better, but I think the strength of Giroud's header does it enough, just does enough. And when you're in that position, sometimes you're just flapping at it. So I give credit to Giroud there and save Meret's blushes there. But then literally 10 minutes later, across from Calabria on the right-hand side, Rachmani, who is marking Giroud, is easily pushed off by Giroud. And again, Napoli are like just frozen. They don't know what to do. They're struggling. They can't get hold of the ball. They're a shadow of the Napoli that we know from last season. And, you know, Rudy Garcia, we've been saying for a number of weeks, he's really struggling to get a tune out of this squad. But he manages to pull out three substitutions at half-time. 5 minutes later, Politano rasping a shot into the roof of the net. It was a fantastic effort and brings them back into the game. And Napoli just from there onwards just look like they're more likely to kind of get themselves not only back into the game, but they're also winning this game. And, you know, 10 minutes later, Raspadori has a free kick opportunity. Now, I don't think necessarily he would be the best person to take a free kick, but he's, you know, you have to look at the preview of that. I mean, it was such an amazing free kick. And
it was a beautiful strike. It was a beautiful strike. I think Rudy Garcia, we do, as you rightly pointed out, we have to give him credit that he made 3 substitutions. He changed the game midway, which is something we have criticized him about not being able to do, like coaching game. He's turned it round. They were a completely different side second half, as you said. I do think he needs to find a way to get Osimhen and Raspadori in the same game, in the same team, though. I think Raspadori is enough of a quality, exciting player and offers enough of a threat. And obviously, Osimhen is Osimhen. I don't think you can just let Raspadori sit on the bench. I think he needs to find a way to get both those players in there and have that kind of double attack. I also think Kvara in this game, we kind of saw the best of Kvara. Despite him not getting a goal, I feel like at times he was absolutely unplayable, and just his dribbling and his ability to beat a man. And it was up against Calabria, wasn't it? He was up against
Calabria.
This is the player that in the Champions League had the better of Kvara last year, and it was all about how he shut him down. I feel like Kvara might have had that game in his mind because it was like personal at points where he was like, how many times can I beat you? So I thought it was really, really great performance from him. And Napoli much improved, but it's just consistency. Again, you can't start a game that badly. You're not going to be able to pull yourself out of it every single time. Of course, there was the controversy at the end. The softest second yellow I've ever seen. I don't know if you saw this, Jason, for Nathan being sent off. He dared have the attacker run into him. And for some reason, the ref deemed it enough to send him off. Like, Adam, that was no way a red card, and it killed off Napoli's momentum, right?
No, and I kind of said it in the review. He definitely was one of those. It's a foul, and that's it. It's not a card.
I'm not even sure it's a foul. Honestly.
Look. I've seen them so many times where they are given, but the point is, it's not a foul. It's not a foul in the traditional sense of it has to be a yellow card.
Second yellow.
That's ridiculous, and it was not something that Adedton literally deserved anyway. It didn't kind of spoil it for Napoli because literally 4 minutes later, Kvara has the chance to win the match. Almost does it.
Right at the end.
But I think there's also question marks, Rory, about Pioli as well. Like 9 lives Pioli, as I call it.
How many questions are we going to ask about Stefano Pioli? I'm like, it's insane.
I don't know how this guy survives half the time, but there is question marks about his game management. He took off Pulisic at half time. And then took off Giroud and Leao, and they both looked pissed off when they were told to come off the pitch. Because, Luka Jovic has not been doing anything for that squad at the moment.
I've said it before. Bringing on Jovic is like waving the white flag and just being like, we'll take the draw. We'll take the draw. This is us. Don't worry, boys. We're not doing anything else now. But, taking off Leao and Giroud is a pretty ballsy move. Like, Jason, did you see Giroud's reaction? It was kind of are you sure? Are you sure about this?
Well, to be fair, he just grabbed a couple of goals, hasn't he? So he's back in amongst the goals. So if you want him to go on and try and regain the lead and try and come away with the 3 points, you've got a player that's sitting there on a brace, clearly playing with confidence from the game. You want to leave them on, and obviously Olivier Giroud's a class striker, in my opinion. He's good with his physicality. He's good in the air. He's got a beautiful little finish on him as well. So he's exactly the kind of player that you get into a good position. You give him the ball, he'll put it into the back of the net. I thought, just having a look at the game, looking at the stats, looks like a very close, very narrow game. I think you made a really good point about Napoli. They're a fantastic team. I watched them a lot last season. They played some sensational stuff. If you're going to go 2-0 behind in a game and you're chasing a game, you're going to be struggling to be picking up points. And I think that's what's gone wrong here for Napoli. Clearly got it in order in the second half. It seems like the red card's just taken a bit of the sting away towards the end of the match in the 90th minute. But I wonder if Milan would probably be happy with the point. If you used to say to them before the game, you go away to Naples and you pick up a point, I imagine they'd probably be pretty happy with that because it's a difficult place to go to, isn't it?
It is a difficult place. Their record there isn't bad. It's a difficult place to go. I think the only thing that makes it worse is that they knew that Inter had got a win before. So all of a sudden they know Inter are top and then it feels terrible. But I think
there's pressure as well, isn't there?
Exactly.
And then 2-0 up and then blow it. It's all about perspectives, really. I don't think a point a bad result, to be honest, but considering you're 2-0 up and you blow it, I think Napoli will be pretty happy and will take confidence away from that and look to try and build from there.
Fingers crossed for him, because there is still a lot of very good players there. And Politano this year for Napoli, he's a player that was laughed out of Inter. He's been laughed out of everywhere he was, basically. And he's absolutely banging him in for Napoli this year. So really good to see Garcia getting the best out of him. That was a cracker of a game. I really enjoyed that one. Two teams just absolutely going at it. Like the pace that game started at, I could not believe it. It was just end to end. It was insane. Would have been game of the weekend if it wasn't for Cagliari and Frosinone, of course. We are going to move on to arguably, the game that bored me second most. We're going to get to the most boring game at the end.
Yeah, sure.
But Inter 1, Roma 0. Now, I was begging my mate Tommy here for us to get tickets. Like, we kind of regularly go to the San Siro. I was like, we need to get tickets for this game. The Ultras had handed out 50,000 whistles for everyone to blow every time Lukaku got the ball. He got a horrific reception. It was all about Lukaku. It was all about how is he going to play, what's going to happen. And of course, it is Lukaku's replacement who gets the goal that seals the win, as Lukaku has less touches in the first half than Pavard, a centre-back, had in the opposition box in that half. It was anonymous, would be a compliment. But as I said in the match review, I don't necessarily think it's all Rom's fault. Roma, I don't think they had their first shot in the 75th minute. I think it was late on in the game. The first half, they didn't have a single attack. It was the definition of a Mourinho performance, despite him not even being in the stadium. Adam, what do we think of Roma's attitude to this? And Inter, finally, they squeezed the win. They've not been able to do that much this year.
No, and Roma kind of redefined the parking the bus, didn't they? They really did kind of park the bus, but in a different sense. But yeah, they didn't have any intent to win this match, and it did feel like it was more Inter that were likely to win this match. I mean, the fact that the whole focal point was around Lukaku kind of, I think, helped spin it for Inter Milan. They kind of made sure that it was all about them, and at the end of the day, they got the job done, which is, I think if this was last season, I think they struggle. I think they really do struggle to get a result. But this season, they certainly got it over the line. And Marcus Thuram, what a signing he's proving to be. I mean, he's also showing what an instant upgrade he is on Lukaku already. Like, he did 7 dribbles successfully done. Now, if you said that about Lukaku trying to do it, it'd either bounce off him or, you know, he just run into someone, right? So I think that was massively a point proved by Inter. Great business done by the hierarchy as well, because to get him on a free when he looked like he was going to join Milan as well. But yeah, you could see the players were fired up, and look, the top of the table again. That's what they need to do. They've got to keep it consistent, and Inzaghi is definitely gunning for that title, isn't he? At the moment, he wants that Scudetto at the moment. So yeah, superb performance given the circumstances. You know, Roma should be a tough game in theory, but yeah, I think it was only tough by the fact that they kind of had bodies behind the line. That was it.
Yeah, I think there's a point where they have to. I understand what Mourinho is. I understand what level the Roma squad are at, but they have to be more ambitious. Like, this is how you would expect Cagliari to head to the San Siro, really, or a Frosinone. Not like Roma are not a bad side. Yes, they've got injuries. They've got a very shallow squad. But I think if I was a Roma fan, I would be super frustrated at just not even just considering yourself so far off them, like just openly admitting, oh yeah, we're nowhere near that. If we get a point, it's a miracle. And that seemed to be what the narrative was, even from Roma fans. I find it really surprising. But for Inter, as we said, this season, it's kind of been an issue for them to break down teams that have just sat back and said, break us down. And I think Inter were able, they were able to do it. And it's a habit they need to get into, because the other team that are right behind them are managing to squeeze out these wins. They are not going away. The fact they've not got European football is a big bonus for them. Juve, bloody hell. 97th minute, they beat Hellas Verona 1-0 at home. Andrea Cambiasso, youth product, getting the goal to seal the win. Jason, I don't know if you've managed to watch much Juve this year. I would honestly put a health warning on the package. Have you seen much of them? They are absolutely atrocious. Have you seen them?
I've not managed to see them. I just keep an eye. I like to keep an eye across Europe just to see how everybody's getting on. And I've seen that they're obviously sitting in second place. And as you say, not having Europe can be a really big bonus. And sometimes in football, it's just about grinding out and grabbing a result. And if you're going to leave it to the 96th minute, then you're going to leave it to the 96th minute. But end of the day, the result shows 3 points and a win, and pressure put on to Inter Milan on the next day. And if you're going to have a team like Roma come to the San Siro, it's clearly the intention's just to not play football, park a bus and say, try and break us down. It can become very frustrating, and then it puts a lot of pressure and a lot of anxiety into the crowd. So it was nearly a perfect perfect weekend there for Juventus to grab a late winner and see Roma try and just grind out a 0-0 at the San Siro, but not to be. I expect Juventus to be in and around the top of Serie A. It's where you expect Juventus to be. I mean, the ambition for them has to be to return back into Champions League football by the end of the season. Will be their aim, but they'll be looking at it and thinking 10 games, 7 wins, second place, 2 points behind Inter Milan. They can build on that and they can try and push forward. And obviously, everyone knows what Juventus are capable of. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting league, actually, Serie A. Just having a look at it, looks very tight at the top and very tight at the bottom as well. So it very much seems like a league where a lot of teams are just capable of beating anybody, and teams are just capable of grinding out and getting results, which makes for a very entertaining weekend every weekend when it comes to Italian football.
Well, this is it. I think it's going to be a genuinely great season. Like last year, it was amazing seeing Napoli run away with it. It was incredible. But I think this title race is going to be insane. But Adam, Allegri, Juve fans don't care, do they? They don't care.
They don't care.
The most boring thing in the world.
They don't care. And Jay made it looks and sounds really positive. Like Juventus's performance.
That's what Juve fans hear.
That's what they like to hear, that they are almost close to the Scudetto. But it was dreadful to watch. Absolutely awful. Brutal. It was against one of the worst sides that I've probably given them far too much credit, Hellas Verona, over the last few weeks. I keep on thinking that they will pull it out of the bag. But they looked the most dreadful side that couldn't even muster any form of attack. It was pretty much a bit like Roma, but to a worse extent. They had 5 people at the back at one time. They could not get beyond the kind of halfway line more than like a couple of times in this match. And, for all Juventus's chances, like they really didn't create much in terms of opportunities on goal. They really struggled to get those shots on target. And it did take the substitutions to really mix it up. So they brought on Chiesa, Milik, for example, Iliades as well. And it was Arkadiusz Milik who gets the header, hits the post. Davidovic has a fantastic game for Hellas Verona, can't clear his lines, and Cambiaso jumps in and tucks away the chance. I mean, that's the most scrappiest goal you're going to get. But that was pretty much summed up Juventus. They're happy to do that kind of style of football. It's a shame, but there's, I don't think this Juventus side really stacks up against the bigger sides, personally. I think they were fortunate that Milan were terrible last week, and they had obviously a sending off that played a part in it. But I think against the likes of Inter or Napoli, I think there's going to be a tougher game for them. But yeah, Allegri, again, you've got to give them credit. Another clean sheet. That's probably the positive to get out of this. So,
he is now the second Juve manager to be able to keep 100 home clean sheets. Giovanni Trapattoni has 150. He's now just got his 100th. And that is all he'll care about. That is absolutely all he'll care about. To wrap up very quickly, the other results, Atalanta have just beat Empoli 3-0. Gianluca Scamacca in my fantasy team against Tommy has just scored 2. Absolutely beautiful. Great to see him back. Genoa getting a huge win against Salernitana, who look massively in trouble. Sassuolo 1, Bologna 1. As Xerxes scores again, the minutes he's getting absolutely paying off for him. Torino beat Lecce, a massive win for them. They've not won in a very long time, so huge for them. Monza, Udinese draw again. Who
I was going to say, Gabriel Cioffi. There's a new manager at the helm, Gabriel Cioffi, who used to be at Crawley Town. He's now at Udinese. Got a draw. Yes, you missed it. Adrian Sutel is no longer the manager at Udinese. So, or should we call it Watford Reserves? I don't know. But another draw.
And another draw for them. And Lazio have just scored. Ciro Immobile in the 95th minute with a penalty to go 1-0 up against Fiorentina. That should secure the win for them. That is all the action in Serie A and the Premier League this weekend. Midweek, we do have some Carabao Cup action. Just looking at the ties here, West Ham taking on Arsenal, Chelsea, Blackburn Rovers, Everton, Burnley, Bournemouth hosting Liverpool, Ipswich Town at home to Fulham. That could be one with a bit of a banana skin, I think. Manchester United, Newcastle, Exeter City, Middlesbrough. Bloody hell, that is a long journey for Borough fans. Christ alive. And Mansfield Town against Port Vale. That is your midweek action. Jason, thanks for coming on. It has been fantastic to have you. When our viewers and listeners want to find your stuff, where can they find you?
Mainly on YouTube. You just put JSGC in, you'll find all my stuff on there. That'd be much appreciated if anybody just want to go and check it out. I'm on Twitter, tagged just at JSGC171 if you want to go and follow me on there. That'd be much appreciated. You can find me on Instagram as well. And you can also find me on TikTok, posting the occasional TikTok video as well, if you want to go and check them out. And that would be much appreciated.
Beautiful. I'm sure they will be doing that. Adam, anything to say before I let these people get on with their Monday evenings?
No, nothing apart from Lionel Messi has won his 8th Ballon d'Or. There we go, folks.
Just absolutely incredible. I'm so glad he's got it. I know you're going to be gutted that Haaland hasn't won it. Immediate reaction before we go, Jason? Immediate reaction?
Haaland robbed. Lionel Messi's a class player, though. He's absolutely world class. The achievements that he's done in football, it's of no surprise. He just oozes class. So yeah, congratulations there to Lionel Messi, and I'm sure Erling Haaland at some point in the near future will be a Ballon d'Or winner. Who knows? Next year, maybe might just be Haaland's year.
Quite possibly. And we do also need to say Jude Bellingham won the Golden Boy as well, and the least surprising turn of events ever. Absolutely love that boy. Good work. Nice. Well, that's it. We're going to leave you there, guys. Thanks for joining us. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, and on TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. Please hit the like and subscribe button down there. And we will see you on Friday to preview next weekend. A dopo. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.